Hi, this video shows tips for replacing a broken top gear on the Singer Genie or Starlet model 353 or 354 sewing machines without removing the horizontal arm shaft. The Genie Starlet machines have a top gear, vertical shaft gear made out of plastic. This plastic deteriorates over the years, causing the gear to eventually break into pieces. Without a functioning top gear, the hook stops spinning and the machine will no longer sew. This happened to me during the pandemic. So I bought a replacement gear on eBay thinking I would try to fix the machine myself. Andy Tube's sewing machine YouTube channel has uploaded a series of videos devoted to the Genie, but he hasn't replaced the top gear. However, in one video, he does mention that replacing the top gear on the Genie is rather difficult because the broken gear is directly below the main horizontal arm shaft, which prevents access to it. He says that the service manual instructs you to partially remove the main horizontal shaft in order to get to the gear, which involves taking apart most of the machine. Andre Banderas has uploaded a YouTube video where he performs this feat and completely disassembles a Genie machine in order to fix the same gear. His broken gear is a bit different than mine though. It's an excellent video, especially as a reference. Well, it seemed like all too much to deal with. I considered selling it for parts or giving it away. It was the pandemic, so I had free time and it was up to the challenge, and I found a shortcut, at least for getting to the gear, which is good. That's why I'm making this video. Unfortunately, I didn't take any video because I didn't know if I was going to be successful, but I did take plenty of pictures so that I would know how to put it all back together. After I removed the case, I ended up removing the motor, the feed dog fork. I disconnected the feed dog height connection, loosened the set screws for the feed dog fork cam. I moved the feed dog height cam over, and then I loosened the set screw and moved the bevel gear over. I moved all those things over to the right. Um, yeah, slid all the items rightward along the main horizontal arm shaft away from the broken gear toward where the hand wheel is. This gives plenty of room to extract the old gear and insert a new gear. The remnants of the broken top gear on my particular machine, a Model 353, was a black metal knurled cylinder held onto the vertical shaft with a roll pin. Unlike Andre Bandera's 354 model, which is all plastic and just pressed onto the vertical shaft. I had to drive the roll pin out of the broken gear while it was still in the machine. Then I used a large screwdriver and hammer to gently tap the old gear off the shaft, going about a quarter inch at a time. Then pulling the bottom pulley out to take up the slack of what how far I'd tapped the gear off the top of the vertical arm shaft, so that I have more room to continue tapping the old gear off. It took 3 rounds of this process. This will all be shown in pictures in a minute. It sounds like a lot of work, but it's surprisingly easy and quick, especially compared to removing the entire main shaft, arm shaft, like the service manual recommends. Anyway, I got the gear replaced, adjusted the timing, feed dog travel, and height, and now the machine runs like a top. Okay, so here's the beginning of the actual instructions. That was sort of just like a summary. How to remove and replace the plastic. How to remove and replace the plastic vertical top gear for the Singer sewing machine 353, 354. I don't need to read all this shit. Um, so this is for the pressed-on metal base with a plastic gear on top version. Um, the other style, which I'll show here, this is the style that Andre Bandera and this other person have. It's a pressed on version. This is not the one I have. It's just a vertical shaft with some ridges and some knurled edges inside as well. And this is just a solid piece of plastic pressed on. This might be easier to remove. You could probably just, it looks like it might just come off the shaft easier. Here's the shaft that particular plastic gear goes on. As you can see, it's got ridges and sort of knurled ridges. Here's another view of that. Okay. Anyway, back to my version. Um, begin with what we're looking at here as far as how it how it's all organized and arranged. This is the bad gear that goes bad. It's made out of plastic. It drives a pulley that turns this hook. Just two pulleys. They're both made out of metal. It seems to be the only plastic gear in the machine. This is the horizontal arm shaft. It's the main shaft in the machine. A lot of stuff is connected to this arm, and so it's difficult to remove. This is the gear that meshes with the broken gear. It's solidly on this horizontal arm shaft. On my machine, this is made out of metal. I've seen in some other Singer machines that it's plastic. So if it's plastic in your machine, you might consider trying to find that gear and replacing it as well. Here's a picture of the feed dog fork, which is necessary to remove. This is where the feed dog fork it goes around that same horizontal arm shaft which we saw in the previous picture. It's behind this feed dog height uh, connection, which is a circle, so it doesn't. It's solidly. It remains on the shaft no matter what. We're going to remove this feed dog fork though. It disconnects down here. It's behind this arm. Like, here's where it connects to that arm right here. It has a plastic rectangle piece that stays on the fork. That plastic rectangle piece um, slides in and out of this metal channel. There's a spring that attaches to this apparatus and connects to the frame up here, another brace. And let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm going to blow up some pictures of this case here, just in case you don't have a copy of this, to show where different screws are. Um, this is the motor. This will be useful later if you're trying to figure stuff out. Okay. Um, so the way the manual recommends that you do this job is that you remove everything until you get to the horizontal arm shaft, which is this right here, and then you slide this out of all of its different, where it is. You slide it out until you get to where the vertical arm shaft meshes with this gear. Here's some actual pictures of that. Um, this is from a French guy who has a video up called, here's the title of his video. I'll put links to his video in the bottom as well. Here's the vertical shaft. Here's that gear that meshes with the bad gear. And the bad gear's right below it. You can't see it in this particular picture. Okay, here's where he slid the gear. Here he slid the horizontal arm shaft out, and he's put the he 3D he made a 3D print of a new gear for that other style that just pushes on. Here's another picture of that same job. Here's where he's starting to um, looks like he's starting to move the horizontal arm shaft back over the newly installed gear. This is Andre Banderas's version here. He has he's pulled the shaft back, and this is the rod comes out from the top. That's how they want you to do this. You disconnect the pulley at the bottom. The set screw presses into this flat space on the bottom of this vertical arm shaft, and you pull it out from the top. Here's where he's put grease on it, and he's putting it back in like so. And this is the type of gear that I purchased on eBay, and he apparently did as well, Andre Bandera. And it seems like it's able to fit on the vertical shaft that I have, which is a different style, and also the vertical shaft that he has, which is the style that I've just shown you with the ridges and the knurled ridges in there. Here's a picture of the vertical shaft, a different view of it, and the difference, the old broken gear and the new one with the set screws. So whereas the French guy 3D printed a newer version of this same thing with no set screws, Andre Banderas bought the same version that I did with the set screws. There's a set screw on uh, 90-degree angles, one at this angle and one at this angle. Um, oops. Oh, shit. Okay. So let's get started here. I'm going to just go through what I did. Actually, I need to show you a picture of. This is what the remainder of my gear looked like inside the machine. It's just this is where the plastic pieces of the plastic that had broken off the gear itself. This is metal, and it's just got a knurled sort of ridge here and a ridge here that the plastic part of the gear was set upon, mounted to. And it has a hole drilled all the way through it. And the vertical shaft that I have is completely smooth all the way around. There's no ridges or anything, and it just has a hole drilled through it as well. And in this hole is a roll pin. So, so this is what I saw when I first started tearing it apart. Um, uh, as I was working this job, or I wasn't sure what needed to come off and what needed to stay on, so I just sort of took things off as I needed them to come off. What you need to do before you start this job, I should cover that first, is let's go back to the instructions. You need to remove the back cover, the front cover, all the covers. The tensioner, which is just this right here. Uh, there's just like a pin mechanism, and this pulls out. You don't need to disassemble this tensioner. Don't take it apart here. There are plenty of videos on AndyTube and others that show how to take this off. It's very easy. It just kind of pops out once you've removed this pin behind it. This actually has to come out before the faceplate comes out. So yeah, that needs to come off first before this faceplate comes off. Pan, which is just the bottom pan. It needs to come off. 82 calls it a boil pan. There's a top metal black bracket. It's thin metal. I'm pretty sure it needs to come off um, to have access to the top of the machine. The hand wheel comes off. The electric motor with the switch and the light, they're all wired together. It's just a few screws and here and there. There's like maybe four, I think, that, and it just comes right off. It's not a problem. The pattern selector lever, which is going to be, I believe, right here, that comes off after you get everything else off. inside. You'll see how it comes off. Um, the stick apparatus and the lever. Is that the, I can't remember. It's been a while. Stitch width? No. Okay, you don't take this lever off, so no. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that is. It's been a while. Oh, you don't take it off. You loosen it. Okay. I don't know. I don't remember how. We'll get. Maybe we'll see it in the pictures. The feed dog fork comes out of the machine. It has to come out so that you can slide the gear and other items over on the horizontal arm shaft. So, feed dog fork. This is what the feed dog fork looks like in real life. This little metal piece, or I'm sorry, this little plastic rectangle attaches here. I left it on the fork. It didn't come, it doesn't look like it comes off easy, so I would just leave it on the fork. Okay, remove the eccentric lobed cam bolts and nuts for both the feed dog fork and the feed dog height bar. That's going to be maybe here. Yeah, here and here. Those both come off. This comes off so you can move this over when it's time to move it over. This comes off so you can remove the fork. Again, these are how they sit in the machine. So one's here, one's here. Remove these two bolts, take out the fork. I'll show you how to take out the fork. So we should probably do the fork first. I'll show you how to do that. That's going to be back here. Okay, first things first, this lever has to be in the upward position. I think if I remember right, it's because this plastic part of the lever, if when it's down, it's inside the machine and it gets in the way. These images are taken from Andre Bandera. Um, there's a bolt that comes out of here. It either screws in or has a clip on the end. It looks like it goes through like the lever, and this bit of metal here is it attaches, it articulates with that feed dog fork via the that little rectangular piece of plastic. Just pull this bolt out and disconnect this spring, which you'll see in a second. There's a spring here. It's that same piece of metal. Here's where the spring is, and it attaches up here. Let me see if there's another picture. No. Here's the bottom of the machine where the those cam bolts are for the different forks. This is the feed dog fork that's coming out. This one doesn't come out, but you still need to take out the bolt. This is how I'm disconnecting one end of the spring. Here's the feed dog fork, and this is the where the bolt came out, and you got to disconnect this spring. I just kind of stuck the this is a continuity tester, and I just stuck it under the spring and kind of pulled it out of that eye. And you could probably just, once it's got no tension on it, you can pull it out of this other eye and set it aside. This is the back side of the machine, as you can see. This is from Andy Tube's video, just sort of the proper labels for these things. Feed lever return spring, feed reverse lever, which is this lever that needs to be in the upward position. The feed regulator, which is this apparatus. Um, this plastic thing here is one end of that plastic rectangle that's on the side of this feed dog fork. I'm calling it a feed dog fork. Its proper name is forked feed connection. It slides in and out of this metal channel here, which I showed you in another diagram. This sounds very complicated, but when you're there, as long as you take some pictures, you won't have any problem seeing how this stuff fits together. It's not complicated. Here's another picture of that feed dog fork with the rectangle. It attaches here. The I think this is the channel right here that this slides in and out of, this channel here. This is that bolt, I think. This is the bolt that goes in the side, I believe, that that screws into this. I'm going to go back to show you that bolt again. The bolt goes in here and it screws into that apparatus here, that metal bit. Here's Andre taking out that bolt that we've been talking about. He's just unscrewed the threads. It's threaded in here. There's, I guess, it might not be threaded. It might be clipped, or it might. Anyway, just pay attention when you're doing it. This is looks like removing the metal channel from around that piece of rectangular plastic. Yeah, see, there's the rectangular plastic on the side of the feed dog fork. Okay, so this is important. This is looking from the bottom side, not here, but right here. This is looking from the bottom side of the machine. The machine is laying, I believe, on its back, and you're looking from the bottom to the top of the machine. So he's got the bottom fork, he's got the skinny part of the fork in his fingers right in front of you, and the fork is arched away from him, and that's the top of the machine that's farthest away from you. You can see the rectangular piece of plastic there. So he's extracting the fork now from the bottom of the machine. You're going to see it has to be twisted, just turned at a 45-degree angle because it's too wide. The fork is too wide to fit straight through. You have to turn it at an angle to go from corner to get it through this aperture from corner to corner. So he's pulling it out. It's coming out. There you go. And the fork is out. And so now that the fork is out, this is the surface that fork was resting on, and here's a plastic washer. And this here that you're seeing in front of you is the feed dog height uh, connection that we disconnected from the bottom here. It doesn't come off, but we're going to slide all this stuff over to give us more room. Okay, go back here. So from the top of the machine, after we've got the feed dog fork out, the feed dog fork rested on this area here. And we just pulled it out. And we're looking at the top of the machine now. We're going to undo this set screw here and slide this over. Then we're going to slide this plastic washer over as well. This is the feed dog height connection. It's like an eye, it's like a round circle. It just it's not connected. It's just resting on the outer edge, the outer surface of another thing that we have to move. So undo this set screw. There's a groove here that's cut into this horizontal arm shaft, and that's where these set screws screw into. So undo this set screw, just a standard screwdriver, skinny one. Scoot it over, scoot the plastic washer over, scoot this feed dog height connection over. Then you'll see here, this is actually the body of this gear. And there's a set screw as well that's in that same groove for this gear. And so it's not, we'll see, we'll get to it. There it is. So you just and do this set screw and scoot this over, and then everything will be out of the way and you can easily get to where the gear goes right here. And so it gets everything out of the way so that you can get the old gear out and the new gear in through the side of the machine. Here, everything is over. This is after I'd already removed the gear, but this is where the gear sits right here on this post right here, and this is the washer that the new gear will rest on. So so let's get back to the so after you've got everything moved over, you have plenty of room. Also, this motor and light will be out of the way. At this point in time, I didn't know that this stuff needed to be out of the way, but it needs to be out of the way first because here's the old gear, and this is also when everything was still snugged up against the old gear. I didn't know that I needed to move this at this point in time. So what you'll be seeing is different than this. This stuff will be out of the way because it's all been moved over out of the way, and this motor won't be here. So you'll have all kinds of room to work, which I didn't have. Okay, so as I mentioned, there's a roll pin in this gear that needs to be driven out the other side. And so that's what I proceeded to do with a continuity tester that has a pointy end on it, a very skinny pointy end. And I just tapped it out. I tried to tap it out with a hammer. I tapped it like this. Uh, and so this is the actual pin, but this is like a mock up of the pin and how I drove it out of the gear. This is the actual old gear. I took the pieces that I found in the machine and I put them back on the metal cylinder so you could see what it looked like originally. Let me go back to show you that again. Metal cylinder, knurled kind of surface where the plastic once was that had the teeth, the gear teeth on it. Those aren't gear teeth; those are just little knurled edges. So there, this is me trying to drive the roll pin out like that, and it went about maybe a third or half of the way out, and then it actually stopped. It stopped and it hit metal in a corner, and I couldn't rotate this, and so I was stuck. Uh, so don't make the same mistake I did. Maybe don't push it all the way through. Just tap it in a little bit, and then spin it around like so to see if you can grab a hold of this with maybe a pair of vice grips or a locking pair of needle nose vice grips or something. You have some kind of way to grab a hold of that and possibly yank it out of there. It might be too tight to do that. It seemed like it was too tight for me to do that. Anyway, I think this is I spun this around here when I was tapping it out, and I thought, oh well, it needs to go out further. And if you'll notice also that I drove it out. I think the wrong end. Um, this is the other side of the end that I was driving it out of, and you can see that it's kind of countersunk, or chamfered countersunk in there. And it probably would have been better for me to drive the pin out from this side because with the countersunk, I would be able to get more of the pin out. I mean, because what I was using uh, tapered wider than the hole. So again, this is the side that I chose to drive out, and I ended up driving it into the side of the into a corner, and I couldn't rotate the shaft any longer. So I felt like I was stuck, and I couldn't. There's not. It wouldn't move, and I couldn't do anything. And so what I did was I went on. I went through the top of the machine, the top view of that gear, and I could see the pin in the corner. I mean, the roll pin in the corner. And so I put the screwdriver on that roll pin and hit it with a hammer a little harder than I was initially doing with the other to try and see if I could bend it down so that I could turn the gear. And it's just me trying to make a mock up of it so you can see what I was doing. And it actually, I had to hit it a few times and I broke it off. which allowed me to spin the gear around and get the rest of the pin out. That's what the rest of the pin out. Uh, at this point, I took the machine and I kind of turned it upside down and shook it until the pieces of roll pin came out, as well as the broken gear. The original broken gear. Here's what it looks like from the top on one angle. Um, it's the front of the machine, obviously. Here's another view of the. So um, at this point in time, it's a good idea to try and grab a hold of the pulley at the bottom. Try to grab a hold of, once you've got the pin out, um, if you're lucky, you can just grab a hold of this pulley. You've already taken off the belt. You can just grab this pulley and pull on it, and it should pull the vertical shaft or the out of the old gear, and and then you can shake the gear off. You can extract the gear through the hole that you have on the side of the machine. Um, but I didn't have such luck. The metal was pressed on to the shaft very snugly, and so I had to figure out something else. If you have the plastic type of gear, it might come off easier by pulling that pulley. It might just slip right off. But then again, it might not. And you might have to do something like I did as well, which I'll show. Um, so, so what I did was I took the screwdriver. I took a big screwdriver and I caught this ridge. There's a ridge right here, and at this angle, I just sort of gave it some love taps to try and like drive it off this horizontal shaft. Here's another view. You can kind of see what's going on. And this is what it looked like when I was doing it. It's a table with some cardboard. The needle is is at the lowest point here. Here's where the hand wheel normally would be. The back side of the machine, the front side of the machine is facing this way. And so I've got the handle, I've got the screwdriver catching that ridge on that black cylinder, and I'm just trying to drive it off the end of the vertical shaft. And it's only got about a quarter inch. This it's unfortunately it didn't focus too well, but it's only got about a quarter inch before it runs out of travel, and it hits the top of this. Well, it hits the horizontal arm shaft. I mean, that's quarter inch. That's about all you get, and it was still really on there. I couldn't pull the. I tried pulling the pulley again, and it wouldn't let go, and so I had to figure something else out. If you have the plastic version where it's all plastic, you might be able to get in here with either a sharp chisel. I wouldn't do a chisel. I wouldn't want to mess up this metal, but you might. Uh, I was thinking there might be a way you could break up the gear and like get it to finish crumbling. 'Cause, the whole thing behind it is it's so old that it's weak, the plastic. So I was thinking if it was all plastic, you might be able to just get it to break up and then just pull the rod out of the bottom of the machine. Because that's what we're trying to do is get the rod out of the bottom of the machine. And so what I had to do at this point, since I ran out of travel, is I had to pull the slack. It just slides real easy because it's got all this play in it. A quarter inch of travel. I just pulled it down until the gear at the top of the machine was snug up against the seat at the top of the machine. So I pulled it. This is the bottom of the machine. I pulled it this way down, and then I wanted to be able to hit that ridge again with the screwdriver and the hammer, but I wouldn't be able to do that very well by holding onto this pulley. I needed something to strongly hold this pulley so that it would withstand the impacts of me trying to drive that top gear remnant off. And so what I did is I took a small rubberized handle, small crescent wrench with a rubberized handle, and I put it underneath the pulley, and it spanned across the machine. It looks like it didn't quite get. It looks like it rested on top of this bar, which pivots, which controls the feed dog height, which is a questionable move. But I'm not hitting it very hard. I'm just giving it love taps. I used a piece of fence wire, like regular fence wire, any kind of wire would work. Bread ties might work. You just want to be able to hold the wrench under the pulley. What I did with this is I just wrapped it under the handle of the wrench, over the pulley, or over the vertical shaft behind the pulley, in the play area, back under the handle of the crescent wrench, and then back up just to hold it there, so that I could get to back to work on the top here, and tap off the another bit of get it to move a little bit more off the end of that vertical shaft. So I tapped it again. It still wasn't enough, but I had a lot more play. I had about twice as much play. So if you can imagine twice as much play. So I got a thicker wrench, a thicker crescent wrench, the rubberized handle. Did the same thing with the tie wire. Tapped it again, and that made it give loose. And so this is it. This was it. Letting loose here. So I was able to just pull it out. And as you can see, the end of this one, the end of my particular vertical shaft where the gear attaches, is completely smooth and round, except for the hole where the roll pin goes through. Okay, so that was done, and so now I needed to get this old piece of uh, gear out, and so I did that with the power of needle nose pliers. As you can see at this point, I still hadn't scooched these gears away, so it was very tight. I barely got this out. You won't have this problem once you've moved all these gears and stuff out, towards the wheel. You'll have plenty of room. This will be easy to get out. It'll probably just fall out. And there's the old one. See what it looks like. And this is compared to the new one. So here's the new one with the two set screws, 45 degrees apart, and the old one with the remnants of the old gear. This is me rem- figuring out I needed to disconnect the feed dog height connection. It doesn't, so I can move it over. I'd already removed the fork, as you can see. This is all the room that you'll have. You got, well, actually not all the room. The gear is still snugged up to where the old gear was. You'll actually have more than this. This is the stuff moved over. There's a lot more room to get in and out of here. You can see where the this is the where the new gear goes. This is the vertical shaft, I think, sticking up through there. I think it seems like, I don't know, maybe not. So this is me putting in the new gear. And so what I did here is I just sort of snuck it in like that. This is viewing from the top. This is where it needs to go right here, underneath this shaft. Everything's been moved over. Um, there's a plastic washer that's real important that, you know, stays where it needs to be, which is under this surface of this gear. It's a good idea to put the vertical shaft back into the machine so that this washer will stay in place and it'll help you place the gear. It's kind of a challenge though, because as you can see, I've got this off the edge of the table. I'm actually using my right hand to put the gear in, and my left hand is holding the pulley and the vertical shaft underneath at the right height to just hold this washer, yet leave enough room to let the gear sit there. It wasn't very effective. Um, it kept here's you can see the vertical gear. I think that's a vertical gear. I didn't realize it had a slotted top. I don't know if it does or not. Anyway, um, I'm trying to place the gear, and I think I got it, but not quite. I didn't quite get it. It's a bit off. and it's a challenge. What I ended up doing is I put a rag. I put the machine back up on the table completely, and I put a rag underneath the bottom of the machine, a bunched up rag, so that it would push this vertical shaft up through the body of the machine, uh, and I could tilt the machine, and it would as I tilted the machine forward, this vertical shaft would lower because more of the slack would be falling out of the bottom, and so I could tilt the machine till it just uh, held the washer where it needed to be, allowed the gear, and I could just sort of position the gear and then tilt the machine back forward. I mean, so that the rod would protrude through the gear and it would be where it needed to be. It's you got to be careful not to let the rod fall back out. Um, so now the gear is where it needs to be in the machine. That's a view from the top, and so now you need to tighten it. So I think I made sure that I had an extra rags under there so that the pulley was being pushed up, you know, not tight, but on some rags so that there was no slack. And this gear is sitting down on this plastic washer, so there's no slack there. So then I could tighten the set screws, and it doesn't matter where you tighten the set screws on that rod because you're going to have to redo the timing anyway, and it's all completely adjustable under the machine. So make sure you have a good Allen wrench that fits these set screws tightly. You don't want to have a one that fits loosely. You don't want to waller these out and not be able to get them tight enough. That wouldn't be good. And so you tighten the set screws. Make sure that there's no play, but you don't want it to be so tight that it's going to grind down those plastic washers. Also, it's a good idea to maybe put a few drops of oil on this vertical shaft before you do all this, to relubricate it. This is after the set screws have been tightened, and so it's installed. Okay, this is some timing stuff I'll get to later. Um, so now that you have the gear installed, um, it's just a matter of pretty much installation uh, is the reverse of removal. Um, you need to slide the gears back over so they mesh with the new gear. And the one thing that's key is when you tighten the set screw for this. Let me get to that particular picture so you can see it. So this is the first one to this here, the gear is the first one to come over once you have the new gear underneath and you mesh it with the new gear. Uh, just tighten the set screw, not super tight. And then once you've got it meshed with the gears, turn grab the hand wheel and stick it on the rod that the hand wheel goes on and turn it by hand a little bit to get an idea how it feels. And you might feel that it feels too tight on one part of the revolution and too loose on another part of the revolution. You don't want it to be super tight so that the on the tight part of the revolution, it's going to put stress on the new plastic gear. So if it feels tight and then loose and then tight, undo this set screw and just back this gear away from that gear just ever so slightly, just very slightly. Retighten the screw again, put the hand wheel back on, turn it, and just make sure that there's no play, but that it's not overly tight during one part of the revolution. This is kind of just a feel situation. You're just going to have to. How did I word it? I worded it very artfully, I think, in the description. Down here, I wrote, after tightening the big gear, spin the shaft all the way around 360 degrees using the hand wheel. Chances are you will feel resistance at some point, and perhaps you might hear where the gears are meshing too tight during part of the revolution. Loosen the set screw and very slightly move the large gear further away from the new gear. Split the difference. It won't be perfect as the new gear uses a set screw instead of a roll pin. You're just going to have to experiment until you're comfortable with it being acceptably tight during one half of the turn and acceptably loose during the other half. Adjust it so that it is snug, but you don't feel actual resistance. It's okay for it to be a bit snug, even to slightly hear it during the revolution. You just don't want there to be too much play during the loose part of the turn that it might eventually jump a tooth, screw up your timing, and break a needle. So there's that. Um, it's just an acceptable level of play, but nope, actually not play, but just tightness. But then after you're happy with it, um, I don't. I guess maybe put grease on it. Yeah, put some grease on it. Then reassemble the feed dog height. Put that back over where it belongs. Maybe put something. Yeah, this is a lube, a place to put oil. So put some oil on here. Maybe some grease. I just put oil. Put the plastic washer and then everything else. Um, okay, and what do we got next? Um, I'm going to go ahead and put these instructions up so you can read them. You can pause this if you need to. I'm going to start scrolling to like the next page, which is the next, yeah, the next page. Let's say. Again, pause these if you need to read. It's important to make sure that there's nothing left in the machine from remnants of the old gear or the roll pin or anything like that. Uh, you know, clean out the waxy grease that's on the worm gear, uh, and replace it with new fresh grease. Uh, there are videos on how to lubricate the machine. Go ahead and give it a good lube. I bought the Singer lube and grease. You could, other guys swear by like Triflow or something like that. There's some other types of boutique oils and whatnot that you can use. Okay, the final steps are adjusting the timing, adjusting the feed dog travel, and adjusting the feed dog height. It sounds complicated. It's really not that bad. Um, One thing I noticed is that the timing adjustment from the Singer 5353 service manual uses the lower timing mark instead of the upper timing mark like in the video. So there's a video online, and I don't know which one it is. I'll see if I can link it, where the guy shows how to set the timing, and he uses the upper timing mark to set the timing. The manual says to use the lower one. Um, you're just going to have to, I don't know, I would go with the manual. That's what I would do. But the feed dog height and the feed dog travel, let me just show you those cam bolts again. Actually, we'll show them right here. Okay, these are lobed in the sense that you can see that the threaded part of this bolt is on one side. The other side is further away. And so this goes through this round hole, and then I don't know what that is. Um, anyway, it ends up. I think this nut goes on the other side of this, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this inside surface here rides on this, and that's how it's adjustable. What you do is the nut goes on the other side of here, I believe, Yeah, the nut goes on the other side of this ear, let's call it. And so the way to adjust this is the feed dog uh, fork is by just spinning this around. As you spin this around, it adjusts one of the movements of the feed dog fork. The feed dog forks have a height movement, how high they protrude out of the top of the plate, the needle plate, and then they have a travel. Uh, this also has a lobed bolt that all you loosen the nut, you spin this around to get to adjust, and then there's like a slot here for a screwdriver to hold this in place while you tighten the nut. So once you get this in the right area, you spun it in the right way to get your adjustment, then you tighten this nut on, I believe. There are videos on how to do this. Andy Tube, he's got one. He's got like about he's got a bunch of videos. I'll link it. And that's about it. And so that's how you get the uh, old gear out and the new gear in with enough room without having to remove the horizontal arm shaft. It's also how you get my particular style of uh, existing broken gear out of the machine because the roll pin and whatnot. There may be even other styles other than this plastic one. This plastic one, I get the French guy's video where he 3D printed one. I thought that was pretty ingenious. That might be worth a shot. That might be easier than you know doing the eBay, Amazon bought version. I really wish someone would make this out of steel. If someone would make this out of metal, then it would never be need to be replaced probably again. Anyway, that's all I got. And thank you so much. And I don't need credit for this. If you want to make a better video using this technique, feel free. I don't need any credit. It'd be nice if you gave me credit, but you don't have to. Um, I'm just happy that the information's out there. I mean, I don't like the idea of these machines, breaking a gear and then people throwing it away. So that's all. Thank you very much. Bye bye.